Hello, and welcome back to the PCC podcast. Today, we have an educational episode for you all. We are going to be talking about understanding your menstrual cycle, which is something that we find ourselves just continually educating our clients about. And unfortunately, we don't get taught this to the degree that we should in school. So here we are.
Hey guys.
So I got Coach Rachel with me here, and we're going to be breaking this down through all of the different phases. So if you want to understand what is a normal menstrual cycle, what to expect, how to plan for it, and things like that, this is going to be your go-to episode. So we'll start with a big caveat because we obviously support people using birth control for contraceptive reasons. So if you are on birth control, like the pill, IUDs, the next one on arm implant, the copper IUD, etc., not everything in this episode is going to apply to you. So I know that you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know the pill and NuvaRing is another one that I forgot. The patch, like those actually suppress ovulation. So we're just not actually we have no chance of pregnancy because of that reason. With the pill, we don't have an actual cycle. We have a withdrawal bleed. And I know when I had the next one on, I didn't have a cycle for 4 years. And then second round, I started getting a weird spotting cycle, but it was not a cycle. So all of those hormonal birth controls, you do not have an actual regular menstrual cycle.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that's important to know. And it's, again, not like us saying, hey, we don't want you being on birth control. It's just having that awareness there, knowing that if you're on those things, you're not ovulating. It's not a real menstrual cycle. It is a withdrawal bleed. And that is going to impact, mood, libido, just
Yeah.
how you're recovering, performing in the gym and whatnot. So I know we'll dive into some of that moving forward. But yeah.
Only caveat is that your IUDs are a little bit less potent. So, hormonal IUDs, you will still have ovulation in most people, but not all. And it can like reduce your period symptoms, bleeding, etc. Some people do lose their cycle altogether. With the copper IUD, which is actually what I have, it is non hormonal. So, you will ovulate, but there is no chance for pregnancy because it's creating toxicity in the uterus. And you are going to most likely experience heavier symptoms with your cycle compared to lighter. And so I know that my OBGYN at least was good about like warning you of like, hey, if you're getting the copper, like, do you have like normally pretty light or easy periods? Because if not, this could be a disaster. So that is a caveat. You will ovulate there. You will actually have a pretty normal cycle with the copper IUD. Just different mechanism there.
Yeah, 100%. I was on the pill for like 10 plus years, and
Ooh,
that one was crazy coming off of. I can tell you that right now. I'm like,
yeah,
just, yeah, it's
brace yourself.
yeah, for real. But no, I mean, it's awesome that they have something like the copper IUD now. Cause what is that? I feel like that hasn't been around, but for what, maybe the last like 10 years or so, if that.
It had because I will have it's 10 years.
Yeah.
So I will get it out when I'm 32. So I'm on year 6.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so it might be newer from what I can tell.
No, it is nice though that still gives you a real cycle when you're
Yeah.
on copper IUD.
Yeah, that is nice. So with that caveat out of the way, and obviously, if you are a client of ours, you can ask us questions about your particular birth control if you're on one, and how that might be affecting you. But we're going to go through the phases basically in chronological order and how they are labeled throughout the menstrual cycle, and how each of the phases affects our nutrition, our training, our mood, our motivation, and actually what to do about it. How do you handle each of these phases and make the most of it? So cool. You want to start with menses?
Let's do it. So, when you're in your menstrual phase, that is when we're bleeding. So, that's day one of your cycle, right? So, super important to note that day one of your cycle is the day you start bleeding if you are bleeding not on a hormonal birth control.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Typically, I'd say day one, to roughly 5-ish, but that can fluctuate
Yeah.
with how long your cycle typically lasts, right? Um, but you want to start with like what's happening physiologically in terms of like estrogen and progesterone dropping.
Yes. Well, I'll kind of just set a stage here of like in your cycle, there's two main hormones that we're going to be paying attention to and talking about. Not that the other ones are irrelevant and we'll mention them as needed, but for the sake of understanding kind of the main mechanisms of your symptoms and how you might feel, estrogen and progesterone are the two main hormones. So a lot of us have heard of these, thankfully at this point. Estrogen is a protective hormone um, and helps with protecting bone density, muscle mass, and helps with carbohydrate metabolism, lots of things like that. And progesterone is gets a little bit worse of a reputation, I feel like, because it is more preferable towards fat metabolism. It tends to be the main player in a lot of our PMS symptoms. So we'll get into that. But these are the two hormones that, if you look up like menstrual cycle graph, like you'll see these things fluxing across the month. So in menses, right, day 1 through 5 to 7 or so, this is right after PMS, and your hormones, essentially, these two hormones flatline and they come down to the lowest that they will be across the whole cycle. And this is where you're most similar hormonally to a man, because a man's hormones look like a flat line of estrogen and progesterone all the time. So that's what that would look like.
Yeah, it is crazy. Yeah. So those drop estrogen and progesterone. That's oftentimes too where you'll see a little bit of inflammation rise just
Yeah.
slightly, which a lot of us notice. When you're on your period, you might feel a little bit more inflamed, maybe retaining a little bit of water. But ultimately, what's happening is our body is shedding
Shuddering.
the new one, the uterine lining. Um, and yeah, so with that, energy is going to be a bit lower. Like I said, inflammation is going to be a bit higher. We have oftentimes people are just feeling a little bit more tired, a little bit more groggy on your cycle. So it's due to the fact that your uterine lining is shedding.
Yeah. And this actually like takes a good amount of energy. Like I think the standard like rule of thumb is like your actual period takes about like 100 to 300 extra calories of energy per day to just shed the uterine lining. Some cycle gurus will tell you to raise your calories on those days, whatever. But this, I feel like it has a good correlation to the fact that, okay, if we're actually burning more energy, if our hunger is higher, our cravings are higher, like it does typically show up that way for most women. Is I'm on my period, I want chocolate, I want food, I'm craving things at the same time we're feeling bloated and gross. So it's not the most fun time, but that's like typically how I see it show up with our clients of mood and motivation and like struggling with adherence with nutrition because of those reasons. So I always tell people like to be proactive, we track our cycles to know, okay, this is coming. I'm going to feel this way on these days. So, like, how can I plan in chocolate cake to my day? How can I ensure that I have a good plan in place? And if I am feeling terrible and it is like a high symptom day, that I schedule my rest day there versus having to go hit my heaviest leg day. Right. So, things like that.
100%. Yeah. I mean, a lot of it, like you said, it's creating the awareness so you know what to expect going into it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, with nutrition, though, what I will side note is a lot of the times when we're craving the chocolate, or sometimes people want more salty foods. I've had a couple of clients recently who are like, I just want meat. And I'm like, why? Because we are bleeding during that
Losing
phase.
iron.
Iron can be, yeah. So ultimately, we need to replenish, restore some of our mineral levels. So iron, magnesium, and sodium. So oftentimes that's why we're noticing, hey, I want salty foods. Hey, I might want meat. Hey, I might want chocolate. So ultimately, it's because a lot of the times those levels are a bit lower. And that's why a lot of us do supplement some of these things.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's so cool how our body literally tells us that. It's like you're craving iron, you're craving magnesium, but it just shows up with like, chocolate, Hershey's milk chocolate is not necessarily a great source of magnesium, but
Right.
but that's the world that we know and are familiar with.
Yeah. It is so crazy. I know. I wish there was like a little, I'm craving magnesium. Or I'm craving chocolate. That means I need magnesium. I'm craving this. That means I need this.
We should put one together.
We should absolutely
Yeah.
do that.
Sweet. Anything else on menses that you wanted to mention?
Um, yeah, I don't think so. I think just like you said with the mood, feeling a little bit more sensitive is pretty common and
Yeah.
something I think that I tend to prioritize a little bit more when I'm on my menstrual cycle, which I try to do always, but might emphasize just a little bit more. I don't cycle sync or anything like that, but it's just a slow morning. Like I love me a slow morning all the time, but giving myself a few extra minutes of grace there on those mornings is nice.
Yeah. Oh, actually, I'll mention something in. Well, this is kind of like carryover from the end of the luteal phase PMS week into menses, because I've mentioned how I've been like tracking my time like every single day. Like ever since I started time studying, I haven't stopped. I have it up on my screen right now. So I am logging my time like I'm logging my macros because I wanted to see my trends of productivity. Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? So interestingly enough, my least efficient week of the whole month, guess what it was? It was the PMS into period week. So even things like mental focus, mental clarity, brain fog, motivation to like finish tasks was way lower, and like emotional overwhelm from like say like delivering to clients higher from that week. So it literally impacts everything. So like that's not to say give yourself a free pass, but like there is such thing as giving yourself grace without like lowering your standards. Like it's okay that I feel like shit.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, yeah, I mean, you nailed it. I think that I've kind of noticed too the emotional overwhelm, especially with, things just feeling heavier.
Yeah.
And I'm like, gosh, why is this? And I'm like, I see where I'm at now. And then it all just makes sense. But yeah,
Yeah.
giving yourself some grace throughout that is super important.
Does Kevin do this where like whenever you cry, like he just asks, "So are you on your period right now?"
Like, what time of the month is it?
Literally every time I cry, he's like, "Is it that time of the month?" And when it's not, I'm pissed. I'm like,
Oh,
"No, I'm actually sad, asshole." But
yeah.
but usually it is, and he's right, so I can't say anything.
I know. Sometimes that frustrates me more because I'm like, can you just let me have my moment? I
I'm
need
like, "I'd still be crying if I wasn't." And he's like, "Okay, sure."
the next day you get your period. I know. That's how it
Yeah.
always goes.
Yeah. So I'll bridge us into the follicular phase because menses is part of the follicular phase. So the follicular phase is day 0 through day 14 up to ovulation. And the follicular phase is half of the menstrual cycle. So a regular menstrual cycle, I should have said this at the beginning, is typically 28 days is like a textbook menstrual cycle. However, anything between 21 and 35 days is considered normal. So yours can be a little bit shorter, a little bit longer. If it is regularly that way, that's like the tell that things are working the way they should, right? So 0 to 14, and this is when, again, estrogen and progesterone are mostly flatlined for the majority of the follicular phase. And then at the end of the follicular phase, towards ovulation, estrogen starts to climb. And so I like to explain the follicular phase as a whole is like when I'm getting my period, I just know that I'm going to start feeling good really, really soon. Usually I'll have like, it'll be like a couple bad days leading into the period. And then coming out of it, I'm like starting to feel on top of the world. And this is because when our hormones are not rapidly fluctuating, we feel like stability. We feel like we can push ourselves in the gym. We have more stable mood, motivation, focus. And then when estrogen climbs towards ovulation, like I mentioned, estrogen helps with carbohydrate metabolism, is protective of bone mineral density and muscle mass. It is a anabolic hormone, so meaning it is helpful when it comes to building muscle, pushing your capacity. So it actually like when you're in that late follicular phase, this is when you're probably like more naturally hitting more PRs in the gym, feeling really, really strong. And also probably like feeling good in your skin, like not holding a ton of water, just feeling really like yourself. So we get a good like 7 to 10 days of that every month. So
that tragic?
Yeah.
I'm like, come on, could we not get like, 2 weeks of that? I
Yeah.
know. It's a wonderful time, truly. But
I
yeah, I
love
mean,
it.
energy is so much higher. You're producing more dopamine. Insulin is more sensitive. Yeah, I mean, like you said, you kind of covered most of it, but ultimately, everyone feels their best. This is
Yeah.
kind of the you're feeling yourself part of the month.
Yeah. I will say, like, to kind of debunk is like, I have had clients who have been, let's say, advanced enough to where we've like tracked macros and they've been like, can we do like a high carb during the follicular phase and like a low carb, high fat during the luteal phase? And I'm like, this was a while ago, but like, I was like, we can try. Like, I just don't think it's like, it's like the amount of difference that that is going to make is so small compared to the logistical headache that that will create for your meal prep and your routines and things like that.
Yeah.
So, like, unless your entire life is centered around your macros, like, I just don't recommend it. But it is good to have awareness of, like, my body is processing these things better during this time, or this is why I might feel a little hungrier versus less hungry, things like that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that is very interesting. I haven't had a client ask to do that before, but like you said, I feel like that'd be such a minuscule difference for the amount of headache it would cause to plan ahead.
Yeah.
But yeah, we love a good follicular phase.
Yeah,
But
we tried it for a little bit. It was not worth it. Just spoiler alert. This was like 2018 too. It was a long time ago.
yeah, but I can
Um,
only imagine.
yeah, yeah. So, I don't have much to say on the follicular phase. It's just a good time.
It really is. I'm like, lift heavy. Your confidence is typically pretty high. You feel more social. It's easier to think about like long-term thinking because just things don't feel as stressful. It is,
Hmm.
yeah. I'm there right now and I'm like, look at
Yeah.
us.
Brain activation. So you were saying like the brain produces more dopamine.
Yes.
Also, like when we're in this kind of state of being, we're using our prefrontal cortex more, so our rational decision making side of our brain, compared to our amygdala or our more emotive centers that are driven by fear or emotion. So, not that like, women are logical all the time anyways, but like if there's ever a time where we're being more emotionally driven, it's the back half.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Can't wait to get there. No,
So,
it's great.
uh, so bridging us then into ovulation, like towards the end of the follicular phase, your libido will typically start to spike up as you get to ovulation. Ovulation is typically what, like a day or two, like 14, 15, 16.
Yeah. It can be like it's like 1 to 2 days kind of vibe, but then you have those days like 3 to 4 days prior to where you're in your fertile window.
Yeah. Yeah. So I believe this is also like during ovulation is when our reproductive hormones that we haven't talked about tend to spike up too, right? LH, FSH.
Yep.
And that's where a lot of our sex drive and just wanting to reproduce at this time can come up. We're still in that late follicular phase, so we're also feeling good. We're feeling hot. We're ready to go. So that is when we ovulate. We release the egg. We're in our fertile window. And obviously, if we are having a regular menstrual cycle and we're not on birth control, that's where conception can happen, right?
Yep. Yeah, I feel like it's again to kind of tag off of what we were saying with follicular phase. You're at the end still. You're feeling your strongest. It's really good for lifting heavy. I will say, random fact is your joints can be a little bit more mobile
Yeah.
during ovulation. So I think that that is something to just be aware of with form. I didn't really notice it up until the last couple of years, but my knee actually will
Really?
tweak like it. The only time I've tweaked my knee every time has been I was like, what is wrong with me? I never let my knee come out a little bit. But when I was in my ovulation phase, when I was
Interesting.
ovulating, yeah, it's happened twice. And I'm like, this is what is going on here? So we just had to be a little bit more aware during that phase. But yeah, I think just appetite normally starts to stabilize a little bit more during that phase. You're not feeling those like increased hunger cues as much anymore. Protein, prioritizing protein always, but super, super helpful there. Um, yeah, I think that aside from that, with mood, like we talked about, just feeling super confident, feeling yourself, kind of like magnetic a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and that's not even including like pheromones during that time of the month. So it's like when you really think about it, it's like it's literally designed for like how humans are designed for reproduction and things like that. So it's really fascinating how it all kind of lines up. But it's like, I mean, that was the whole point.
I know it is just wild to really think about, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. And then we go into the worst.
The luteal phase. So this is days. Typically 14 through 28 is how it's coined. And it's also typically broken up into just luteal phase. And then the late luteal phase is the last 7 days before the menses begins and the cycle starts over. And we all know the late luteal phase as PMS. So let's talk about it.
Very unfortunate, but I guess we can start kind of what's happening during the luteal phase in general. So start to notice that progesterone is rising. And this is again where this is more late luteal phase, but you might start to notice that hunger increasing again
Mhm.
as you're starting to PMS. But you'll notice that if you're someone who wears an aura ring, that you'll notice your body temperature starts to rise a little bit. Um, you're a little bit more sensitive to stress. That is one that I tend to notice the time.
Yeah.
And then one thing, like you mentioned earlier, progesterone. If progesterone is lower, if our progesterone is not in a good optimal spot, then a lot of the time that PMS is going to hit you significantly harder.
Mm.
So that's a good way to kind of gauge where's my progesterone at. Obviously, if you want to know, you need to get your blood work done. But that being said, if your PMS is hitting you really hard, it is a sign that, hey, maybe we should get some blood work looked at or work on some other lifestyle things. But training, this is where I personally start to notice, especially that I might not feel quite as strong doing. Have you noticed for yourself? Like, I don't run as much, obviously. I know you are more of the runner, but I know that that can feel a bit more challenging. Have you noticed that?
Uh, in the like late luteal phase, it's just harder to get started. I think once you're like in it,
Yeah.
it's always been fine, but like it's getting started and like it's literally just like how puffy I feel for me.
I know. Yeah, it's awful. I feel so inflamed and I'm like, can we figure this out? I could
Not, yeah.
hydrate like crazy and I'm still going to feel incredibly inflamed. But yeah, I think that yeah, like you said, just getting the motivation to get started is a big challenge during that phase.
Yeah.
But ultimately, also like you said, once you get going, it's kind of like, okay, I'm here. I might not feel as strong if you're lifting or it might not be a PR run, but once you're going, you're going.
Yeah. I actually, yeah, I didn't pay attention to splits enough to really look at like, did I get slower during that time of the month or not? So I can't tell you that actually.
Yeah.
I'm sure there would be some kind of correlation. I'm sure, but but yeah, like so when we are in the luteal phase, progesterone, like you said, peaks and then crashes. Estrogen comes up again, but doesn't quite hit the peak that it did in ovulation or the follicular phase, and then it crashes as well. So literally, how the graph looks is like in the luteal phase, both these hormones come up, and then like PMS is how I describe it to clients is like you see this part where like the hormones are just tanking. Like that's why you're having PMS. Your hormones are just going from this high amount to just tanking out. And it's clearly having an effect on your symptoms. So, and then it brings you back to menses, right? And like I said, progesterone, a little bit more preference towards fat metabolism, a little bit more of a catabolic hormone. And like the thing I hate about like cycle syncing gurus is like they say that you shouldn't be resistance training during this phase, which is total bullshit because even though there's a slight propensity towards these things, it does not mean that if you go resistance train in your luteal phase that you're going to lose muscle instead of gain it. Like you're still giving your body the stimulus that it needs. And even if it's not the highest quality training session, it's still a training session. And I think the key here is how do you keep awareness and foresight over how you might feel,
Yeah.
but still do the thing anyways, because I've noticed more like over the course of time is like just when I'm being consistent with everything, nutrition, training, how much my cycle actually affects each of those things becomes less because I'm just taking better care of myself.
100%.
And your body, your symptoms, your body, like it responds better to PMS and your cycle symptoms as a whole because of all of that. So
100%. I think that's the first thing I ask clients when they say, you know, I had a really painful cycle this month. Like my PMS was really bad, whatever it may be. It's kind of like, okay, let's reflect for a second. How was our sleep this month?
yeah,
How did we feel like we were recovering? Did we feel like we're, prioritizing that blood sugar balance that we've been focusing on? Like, are we getting good sleep? I mean, is stress been high? These things are just so important. And on those months where you're like, everything feels great, you're very likely going to notice that your cycle is not nearly what it is on the months where stress is high, sleep isn't as great,
yeah.
nutrition isn't a priority.
100%. Yeah. And it's hard because, like, it's just another thing that we need to take responsibility over.
Mhm.
But, like, it is something that it's not completely controllable. And there are people that have it worse than others for sure, based on genetics. But you can absolutely dampen the severity of your symptoms with just your self care, like your basic training, nutrition, stress management, sleep. And there's like really no other way to put it. Like if you treat your body like shit, it's gonna fight back.
Yeah, it's for dang sure. I
Yeah.
know.
So yeah, so luteal phase isn't necessarily fun. I think towards the beginning of it, I don't really notice it personally.
Yep.
And then in those like last 5 to 7 days, I'll start to like notice like I feel like kind of tired, brain fogged, I'm less productive, kind of, don't want to go to the gym, whatever. And
Um,
then my phone pops up with like your cycle is going to come within the next 9 days and I'm like, "Oh no shit."
What's up? I know.
That's
Always,
literally it just pops up right when I'm thinking it.
that's always how that goes. But
Yeah.
yeah, it is unfortunate. I think that's one of those things. Even in the months I'm great, like I still am going to notice that I'm a little bit more tired. I think
Yeah.
that's my biggest thing, just a little bit more tired.
A
I
little
think
more sensitive.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I will still get a little more sensitive.
Yeah,
Sorry, Erin.
I know. Sorry, Bev. We're trying our best out here.
So, on that note, like normal PMS versus not is a good question to ask here. I'm curious for your thoughts too, because I feel like normal is a big range
Hmm.
and there's a lot of context that we need to, make that statement. But
I
uh,
know.
I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I think and it's hard because there's not specific, the numbers or data that we can say if this, then this. It is a bit more subjective when it comes to PMS, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I do think if you are feeling like my cramps are so bad, my symptoms, I guess is a better way to put it, are so bad that I don't feel like I can get through. A lot of times, day one, day two are people's worst days with your actual cycle once you start bleeding. If you're feeling like you can't get through those days without needing to take medication, whether that's, ibuprofen, Tylenol, whatever, to get through the day, or, worse than that, you have to stay home from work, something like that, absolutely not normal. We need to, if you have a day here and there where it's been a super high stress month, sleep was horrible, nutrition was not great, didn't get in any movement. Okay. If we need to take an ibuprofen that month, you know what? Let's see if we can regulate everything and see how the next month is. But if this is something we're running into time after time after time again, that is not normal. And being able to just have that awareness and know that there's likely something going on underneath that we need to dive into a bit deeper. That's kind of the first thought that comes to mind. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
That was essentially like my thought too was, is it disrupting your ability to live your life
Yeah,
or is it just like discomfort? And
right.
because it will not be fun, it will be uncomfortable, it will be, painful, whatever. But to the point where you have to call off work, to the point where you couldn't go to school, right? A lot of girls like say when I was in high school, like I just skipped school those days or things like that.
Yeah.
Um, that is where it's like, okay, we need to look deeper and like what's actually creating this. So that was kind of like what I was going to ask you, was like, is that like a good starting criteria? Because I think that there are like gray areas within that like someone could be accepting certain symptoms as normal when they don't have to be, that aren't disruptive of your day-to-day life, but it just could be better.
Yep.
So like, and there's no gold standard of like this is what it should look like type of thing. It's just, yeah. So I think uncomfortable but tolerable and not disrupting your normal day-to-day life.
Agreed. Yeah. It's a tough one with there not being some specific measurements that we can put out there. But at the end of the day, understanding that you should be able to function completely normally with maybe a little bit of cramping here and there, maybe feeling more bloated, not feeling 100% by any means, but knowing that you can get through the day and not questioning whether you need to be overly medicating or calling out of work,
Totally. Yeah.
school, whatever.
Yeah. So I think that's a good one. And then where do you track your cycle?
I use Aura Ring as one of my, I will say this has actually been the most accurate. I use the Flow app too, FLO. I've used the two for quite some time. Um, but I have noticed recently that Aura is just a bit more accurate than, I mean, because it has the actual body temperature on
Yeah,
it.
I figured.
So yeah. What do you track yours right now?
Yeah, I have for years, but I don't use anything fancy. I use the health app in iPhone.
I mean, honestly, it's a one less app you have to get.
Yeah. So I've just used that for years and years and years. And it gives me the data on my symptoms, my predictions, and the timing. And so far, I haven't needed anything else. So I haven't gone farther. I think like when we start to explore, like trying to conceive, I'll probably go into a more in depth app.
Yeah,
But
100%.
um, for now, I'm a simple gal.
Yeah. I mean, it works. And at the end of the day, you don't need all the fancy stuff. I will say this is pretty incredible. I mean, I
Yeah.
have been very surprised about the data it gives me in regards to my cycle. I've had irregular cycles where I'm like, yeah, I like just an off month and I look back and it's like you didn't ovulate this month. Like it was
That's
uh
crazy.
yeah, it is so crazy to look back on. So just having the data there is cool. But yeah, I love it.
Sweet. Is there anything else on understanding your menstrual cycle that you feel like we need to cover?
Mm, I don't think so, but I would just say if you don't track your cycle, it
Definitely start.
I would do so. Yeah. It's so simple. I'm sure like in the health app even, if you have
Yeah.
an iPhone, just I'm sure it's as simple as marking you got your cycle that day.
Yep.
And
Heavy, medium, light,
yeah,
and what symptoms did you have? That's it.
and that's such a game changer just to have that awareness, especially yeah, just in general, I think creating that awareness with yourself and understanding why you may be feeling the way you're feeling throughout the month is pretty life changing sometimes. So,
Yeah. It can just take you out of that like victim mentality of like, oh, I can't because of my cycle hit me. Like the circumstances threw me off thing.
yeah,
Like it's like I was planning on doing, let's say you had all of your sights set on getting a killer workout and meal prepping, doing all this stuff. And then you are like on the last day of PMS leading into your cycle and you have all this brain fog and all this low motivation. And if you don't know that that's coming, it's like, well, then I planned for like a, mid follicular phase kind of day.
yeah,
And I feel like I let myself down and circumstances got in my way versus like just knowing it's coming and being like, let me be realistic with my expectations here. Of like, I'm still going to work out or get my stuff done, but just the intensity might be a little different.
yeah. Could not agree more. I think it's so important. Just have those realistic expectations.
Yeah. So sweet. Hope you guys learned something. Let us know if you're a client of ours and you listened, what a new takeaway was, or maybe it's just a good reminder that you needed to hear. And we appreciate you guys so much for listening. Thank you so much. Make sure you're subscribed. If you're not, make sure to do that right now if you're not driving. And we'll see you back here next week.